Bonjour. I'm not going to offend you with my poor French, so excuse my reasonable English. My daughter is studying French, German, Latin, and also a number of other languages to make up for my poor French. So let me just walk you through some of the things that we are. Let me just move that a little bit away. Let me just talk you through a few things that we've been working on over the last 6 months to hopefully make digital transformation and interdigital operations a little easier. So everybody's talking about digital transformation, and digital transformation for us is a journey. Before I joined Alfresco, one of the things I did in my colourful career is for 2 years, I led the digital transformation of a bank in England with 18,000 engineers. And one of the things I was very aware of is that trying to find money for digital transformation across all the things you have to digitally transform is really hard. So, this is puffing a little. So one of the things I'm thoughtful about as I demonstrate to you today some of the things that we're going to be adding into the platform are the kinds of things that will help you need to find less money to be able to do more transformation, because there's never enough. As we look at the landscape with which you have to build your systems and your customers have to try and use the many systems you have, one of the things you'll have in your organizations is you'll have outside systems that face into your customers, and you'll have systems inside your organization that your staff have to use, your colleagues have to use. And in most organizations, those systems are not well connected. So anybody here from or worked with financial institutions, banks or finance? Anybody from finance? Some government? So citizens. So and any of you have to work with very complex systems. So Oracle, SAP, any of those kind of systems where you have to connect them together. As soon as you have to start connecting those systems together, the orchestration of those things and the content that has to move between those things is really hard to build. And you normally need really smart engineers. Does anybody have problems hiring really smart engineers? Yeah. If anybody knows of any smart engineers that are looking for a job, please see me at the end. Yes, there's not many of them around. So we have to, with the smart engineers we have to make their lives hugely easier. And for the rest of us who aren't so smart, we have to be able to still generate business value. So when you look at digital operations is making those allowing those engineers help the business and your businesses and your customers' businesses connect all of those complex systems together with content, process, and governance. And that's really where we sit. We are that intersection of those things. And as I think every day about the kind of things we build for you, I'm really thoughtful about those 4 different areas and those 4 different challenges that we have to bring together for you. And how do we make that, from the time you install our product to the time you get value out of our product for you, your customers and yourselves, how do we make that simpler, more scalable, more reliable, more secure? Brian Remington, who works with me, our Chief Technology Officer and architect, will talk a bit more about how we think about architecture and how we bake that thinking into our products later on today. So, as we think about the things you need to build, one of the things that we're seeing, it's a little bit of an eye chart, but you'll be able to download the slides later. One of the things is about the legacy systems. So legacy systems being anybody who works in organizations that are more than 5 years old have legacy systems. Anybody who's works on systems that are beyond 5 years old has just harder legacy systems. So Anybody here still working on anything with COBOL in it? I mean, it's still out there, right? I mean, engineers who write COBOL are now paid huge amounts of money because there's a lot of COBOL still out there. So we still have all those legacy systems. And in the bank where I worked, we had, when we did our digital transformation, still happening, there were over 2,500 systems that had to be integrated to make the bank work. I'm just going to say that again, 2,500 systems that have to be integrated together to make a large bank work. And they have to be seamlessly pulled together. And so you've got legacy content, you've got monolithic stores, and then on the top of it, you've got your customers needing a beautiful experience. Anybody here got children? Okay. How many of them download a new app on their phone every day? Okay. So one of the interesting things when I worked at the bank was we did a really interesting study across 17-year-olds. And we said to them, if Facebook opened a bank, would you join? And the answer was more than 80% of them said they would change tomorrow. That was when Facebook was cool. Now it would be Snapchat. And the interesting thing is when we look at our children, when they change banks or when they change providers of things, banks being an example, the only thing they see of a bank is the app on their phone. So literally, my daughter thinks changing a bank, my daughter is now 16, she thinks changing a bank is just simply deleting one app off her phone and downloading the next. And that's how they think. So when we think about the systems we have to build, the expectation is that they should just be that simple. So that's one of the reasons I joined Alfresco, the concept of a digital business platform where we can wrap all that complexity up, hide it from the fact that the business engineers and developers and business people don't want to see all the complexity, but they still need the capabilities. So wrapping that up in a digital business platform that allows those beautiful experiences to be created. Some examples here using our application developer framework, which is beautiful. It's all Google material design. That this gives a modern, fresh look and feel. Is a really important way for us to get that new app experience out to our customers and our colleagues. All wrapped up across the digital business platform. I think it's a really powerful story. And we're going to increasingly enrich that experience. So, as you think about the digital business platform, this is one of Brian Remington's slides of architecture. So, I'm going to talk about it briefly. I think it's interesting to look at the architecture of the digital business platform from how we end up with a simplified deployment approach that has to be able to scale. So we're very aware as you try and scale across more and more users, across more and more content, pulling in more content and automating that content with process, our ability to scale and provide horizontal scaling is really important for you. And we know that. And we're also trying to make that experience simpler because as you try and scale things, complexity tends to get harder. Anybody here who has come across words like Kubernetes, Docker, containers, words we never thought we'd be talking about, it's hard for us as people who have to build systems to worry about those things. And at Alfresco, we're trying to simplify that experience. We know it's tough. We're going to try and simplify it as much as we can and give you the ways of deploying simpler. Integrations, moving up from the deployment approach. We know that you have to integrate with many systems, and we're going to be working on better sets of integrations across things. The core services of our platform, again, enriching and making those more solid. And then analytics. One of the things I'm very thoughtful about is having information locked in store in a big storage vault and having process that's just running is important. but what is it telling you and your business about what value they should be getting? So we're going to be thinking much more around how to use artificial intelligence and machine learning to give you better insight as to what's happening and where the value is in your content and process. And then finally, as I've talked about, the user experience, the beautiful instant on experiences that we deserve and our children will demand. And so here's how we break that out over our different areas of the product line. We have rich sets of APIs. We've got intelligence services, which I'll talk a little bit more about shortly. And we've got Preeti, one of our senior product managers, who will be talking about some of the new capabilities we've got in artificial intelligence as we look forward. One of the things I loved about Alfresco when I joined is the open source nature of the product. What does open source actually give us? It gives us freedom. It gives us freedom to be able to use the source code as we want, but it also means that if we want to expand that capability and take on more enterprise features, you still want the freedom to be able to use more capabilities how you want to use them. So that's why, for example, we have a mobile app experience. We have SDKs, developer kits, for you to be able to use our product in an open way. I think one of the most undervalued products we have right now is Desktop Sync. Desktop Sync gives you a beautiful consumer experience. I mean, at home, my family started me down the road of Dropbox. I had no choice. My wife said one day, "Here's your list of tasks to do. And by the way, I put it in Dropbox." So now we share tasks in Dropbox. I'm not sure I wanted that experience, but that's the experience I have. But then I came to Alfresco, and Alfresco said, well, we have Desktop Sync, which allows us to synchronize from the content repository to my desktop, just as a folder would be synchronized. So instead of emailing files around in Alfresco, we can actually just synchronize them from the repository onto the desktop and back again, with things like governance around those things on the desktop. That's a consumer experience inside your enterprise. And I think that's a really powerful way of giving your employees and your colleagues freedom whilst providing governance and security around your most important content. And then cloud, finally. Who here is experimenting with some form of cloud? Anybody here experimenting? Okay. Anybody actually doing it for real? Anybody? Okay, well, we've got some hands up. I'm always thinking that they're the courageous ones who dare admit they're doing it for real. But again, everybody is looking at cloud because if you're not looking at it, your competitors are. Again, when I arrived at the bank, at Lloyds Banking Group, the day I arrived, I said, I'm going to put everything on cloud. I'd just come from Skype and Microsoft. Everything's going to go on cloud. When I arrived, I had group audit and risk and compliance and the security people at the bank telling me I couldn't. By the time I left the bank 2 years later, you had to say why you weren't going to use cloud, because they'd recognized at the bank that it's actually the way forward. So at Alfresco, we believe that's really important. So what does that mean for you as customers when we think about giving you freedom on cloud? Well, one of the things we know is we're AWS first. So AWS, they were one of the first vendors to come out with a cloud offering that was serious. And we are serious partners with AWS. We spend a lot of time with them. We use a lot of their capabilities, and we build on that so that you can. But we also know that many of you don't use AWS or aren't experimenting with AWS. We also know that there are other companies that are also doing cloud. We also know that some of you don't want to have to put your own software onto cloud. So there are many customers we talk to who say, I don't want to have my own data center. I don't want to have my own servers. I don't want to have to worry about all the operations people who keep those servers going. And what we see is a lot of organizations spending a lot of money just keeping all that metal running. So one of the things I'd like to preview today for you is the Alfresco Cloud. We're previewing something called Alfresco Cloud, which is a content as a service offering from Alfresco. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means instead of having to spend all that 8% of your money and your customers' money just trying to keep the lights on, what we're looking to do is reduce that down so that it's only kind of cost 20%, and we will actually host and run the Alfresco offering for you. So you can innovate. You shouldn't be worrying if you don't need to, if you have to, for various reasons, your company's security policies, etc. If you want to run it on premise, we are there for you. We are still on that journey. We are absolutely doubling down on making sure the on-premise products for customers who want to run on-premise is an ongoing, beautiful, rich experience. But for customers who don't want to run on-premise anymore, we're going to be offering you the ability to start looking at our own cloud offering. So that will mean you don't need all the talent just to keep Alfresco running. Your Alfresco talent can be building solutions. It also means that we will worry about all the security. We will also worry about all the upgrades that you have to worry about. And it will live on top of AWS. So if you look at how it's architected, we are ultra cautious about security, super thoughtful. We've hired some of the smartest people on the planet who have done this time and time again to make sure that this is a secure, robust, and high-performing platform, because we know your business relies on it. We also want to make sure that it's cost-effective for you. We know how expensive it is to run. We run our own software for ourselves. We use our own software. We know that running it on tin, you have to be very thoughtful about how much it costs. I get the bill every month for running my own business. I want to give you the chance to reduce your bill. And so what we're launching at the moment is what you could describe as simply a better cloud. We're going to have, so that's going to be previewing in the US first. We want to make sure that the US, we can do it well in one geography, and we've really nailed it for those customers who want to come on board first. And then as we roll out across the rest of the world, your local account team will be able to tell you when that's coming. The other thing about Freedom is we know that some of you use Microsoft. So what we are also previewing, we're launching this year a content connector for Azure to make sure that if you are looking at using the Azure platform, you can also store your content at low cost using native capabilities. So what that'll allow you to do is, in the same way as we currently have an S3 store for Amazon, for AWS, we'll have the same capability on Azure to make sure that if you are an on-premise customer who wants to carry on running your own infrastructure but want to take advantage for storage of Microsoft, you can now do that natively with our technology. Thinking about usability and then simplicity. How do we simplify things? So as part of that, artificial intelligence, machine learning, everybody's talking about it. Very few people are actually doing it well, or even doing it, because it's complicated. It means you have to have experts. It means not only do you have to have smart software people, engineers, you also need smart engineers who know machine learning. Our job at Alfresco is to make that complexity go away for you. So as part of the simplicity message, we're previewing Alfresco Intelligence Services 1.1. We've already had our first release out earlier this year that simplifies your ability to use artificial intelligence. It's built into our transform services. You buy the extra module, it plugs in as part of our transforms. It feels like a transform service, and therefore it feels more like you would know Alfresco to look like. You don't have to worry about the complexity underneath it from an AI perspective. We worry about that for you. That was version 1. With version 1.1, we've now allowed you to use custom machine learning models. What does that mean for you? It means that rather than using just the ones that we saw about things like driving licenses, where the models The machine is already trained on how to get that data. You can now train the models to do things like, in your organization, you may have types of invoices, purchase orders, specific documents that you and types of content you care about, and you can now train the models and use those trained models in our service, which gives you in your industry a competitive advantage. Again, building on the simplicity piece, governance is one of those things that nobody likes to do. Yep. It's like filling in your tax forms. Nobody wants to do it, but you just have to. Nobody likes to have to worry about retention policies. Nobody likes to have to worry about, should that document have to be a record? But it's critical for business success, and it's critical to be legally compliant. So one of the other things I'm excited about is the concept of invisible governance. It's about making it so that your colleagues and your customers don't have to worry about, is something a record or not, other than it being incredibly simple and checking a box. As part of that, we're increasing our capability on the governance services side. We're actually looking at governance services 3.2, and in 3.2, one of the things you can now do is you can, as you search for content, search results can give you active content and records. So it'll actually show that you've got active content. It'll show that records exist in that active content. You can also select active content and put it as a legal hold. And again, all these things are just making it simpler for colleagues and your customers to be able to know there's a record there, know there's a legal hold on something, whether it's active or not now. And again, that's a key differentiator for you and your customers and your colleagues and staff to be able to do that with simplicity. For us, simplicity, we give you simplicity. That gives you faster time to value. It means every time we make something simpler for you to do, whether it's store content on a different cloud like Azure, whether it's take advantage of new capabilities of machine learning with your own models using Alfresco intelligence services, all those things give you faster time to value that makes your customers and your colleagues more successful. So let me just run through again what I've just talked through. I've talked through the fact that we now have the legal holds on active content. So for the first time, you'll be able to actually have active content and invisible governance across that active content. The custom AI models that you'll be able to train yourselves to be able to take advantage of a simple AI service that just looks like Alfresco and be able to now auto-classify documents, the things that all of us hate doing but just has to be done. We automate that. Azure Blob Store, so you get more choice and more freedom on which cloud provider to use. And finally, and I think really interestingly, we now have Alfresco Cloud previewing, which takes all of the complexity away for customers who don't want to have to run Alfresco. We will now take that pain and we will do it for you. And you can then focus your attention on building innovation. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.